It begins quietly, not as rebellion, not as defiance, but as a whisper, a soft postponement, a small escape disguised as logic. I'll do it tomorrow. At first, it feels harmless. A small delay, a moment of rest you think you've earned. You tell yourself you'll get to it later when you have more energy, when inspiration strikes, when life feels a little less heavy. But gradually, tomorrow becomes a place you live in. It becomes a refuge, and slowly, a prison. Before you realize it, the things that once mattered most begin to gather dust in the corners of later. We call it procrastination, but that word carries shame, as if the problem were laziness or a lack of willpower. The truth is rarely that simple. Procrastination isn't born from carelessness. It's born from fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of being seen and found not enough. So you wait, hesitate, and build small fortresses of excuses, convincing yourself that you're simply not ready yet. But readiness is rarely the issue. What you're really waiting for is safety, emotional, psychological, and spiritual safety. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Procrastination is one of those invisible directors, a quiet force steering you away from the places where your fears still live. Somewhere in the past, there may have been a moment when action led to pain. Maybe you tried and were mocked. Maybe you reached out and were ignored. Maybe your effort was met not with warmth, but with disappointment. The mind remembered. The body remembered. The nervous system learned its cruel equation. Action equals danger. Mistakes equal rejection. So now, as an adult, you call it putting things off, but your body calls it protection. You scroll instead of starting, tidy instead of creating, plan instead of pursuing. The cruel irony is that every small delay deepens the guilt, and guilt feeds the paralysis. You begin to despise yourself for not beginning, and that self-criticism only strengthens the fear that began the cycle in the first place. This is not defiance. It's trauma wearing the mask of delay. Many psychologists trace procrastination to perfectionism, that relentless voice whispering that anything less than flawless isn't worth attempting. But perfectionism itself is a scar, a memory of conditional love praise that had to be earned, affection that disappeared when you failed. Somewhere you learned that love was performance, not presence. So you built a fortress of control. If you never start, you never fail. Jung described this tension as the conflict between the ego and the shadow, the bright persona that seeks approval and the hidden self that trembles beneath it. Procrastination lives in that shadow space. It is the tug of war between the part of you that longs to grow and the part that still fears the cost of visibility. The adult in you wants to progress. The child in you flinches at the thought of disapproval, so you delay. Not because you don't care, but because a younger version of you still remembers how much it once hurt to try. If you listen closely, "I'll do it tomorrow" is not rebellion but a plea. Please don't make me prove my worth again. Please don't make every action a test of being enough. And yet, the modern world has no patience for such softness. We glorify productivity, worship efficiency, and label hesitation as weakness. We treat rest as indulgence and stillness as failure. But to rush healing is to repeat the harm. Inside every chronic delayer lives both guilt and grief. Guilt for what isn't done, and grief for the self-betrayed again and again. Each morning begins with determination and ends with disappointment, a loop of self-betrayal disguised as comfort. Then the inner critic arrives, sharp and unforgiving. "What's wrong with me?" But nothing is wrong with you. You are fighting a war no one taught you to name, a war between the desire to evolve and the instinct to stay safe. Procrastination is the psyche's quiet rebellion against a world that never allowed rest without reason. It's the soul's way of saying, "I'm tired of performing for approval." It's the body's whisper, "I need gentleness before I can begin again." Jung believed that growth comes not from striving, but from integration, reconciling with the parts of ourselves we've exiled. Healing procrastination begins not with stricter schedules, but with conversation, a dialogue with the self that hesitates. Sit with it. Ask, "What are you protecting me from?" Listen for the answer. Perhaps it's fear of judgment. Perhaps exhaustion. Perhaps the memory of trying so hard once and being met with indifference. You cannot bully your nervous system into safety. You must build safety within it. True productivity does not arise from fear. It grows from trust. from knowing that even if you stumble, you remain worthy. Mistakes become evidence of courage, not failure. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet how can you become who you are if every action feels like a test of your value? Procrastination, at its root, is not a delay in doing, but a hesitation in being. When we say, "I'll do it tomorrow," sometimes we mean, "I'm not ready to face myself today." Every act of creation forces self-confrontation, and if that reflection has long been linked to shame, we turn away. Healing procrastination, then, is not about hacks or schedules. It is about reclaiming safety in self-expression, unlearning the belief that worth must be earned through output. The next time you find yourself stalling, don't rush to fix it. Pause. Notice the tightening in your chest, the flutter of anxiety in your stomach, the whisper of "not yet." That whisper belongs to the child who once tried and was told it wasn't enough. The child who learned that effort had consequences. That part of you still lives within, pulling the strings of hesitation. The way out isn't discipline, it's dialogue. Reach back, take that child's hand, and say, "It's okay now. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove worth. You can try and still be loved." That is where change begins, not in productivity charts, but in compassion. Self-hatred never heals. Understanding always does. Tomorrow doesn't have to be the enemy. It can become a teacher, a mirror showing what still feels unsafe to touch today. With awareness, even hesitation becomes sacred, a signal pointing toward the wound that still needs warmth. When you finally act, not from panic, but from peace, something shifts. Action no longer feels like exposure. It becomes expression. You stop performing for love and start creating from it. That is the quiet revolution of healing procrastination. Not speed, not efficiency, but integration. Jung reminded us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To face the part of you that delays, that hides, that fears, is to step into that light. "I'll do it tomorrow" is not the voice of weakness. It is the voice of a wound asking to be seen. When you finally listen, when you honor the fear instead of fighting it tomorrow, stops being a hiding place and becomes a beginning. It becomes the space where the child who once hesitated can finally breathe. And for the first time, doing no longer feels like pressure. It feels like freedom.